Malaria is one of the most common illnesses here in Africa. Despite the fact that it is so common, about 440,000 people die from malaria every single year. Alarming, right? Today is World Malaria Day, and on the show we'll be discussing malaria, its symptoms, prevention, and lots more with our guests when we get back from this short break. Stay with us. Okay, welcome back. This is Catholic Faith Forum, and today we're talking about malaria because today is World Malaria Day. I have a very interesting guest on the show today. Her name is Dr. Anire Chimaoduko. She is a public health physician and an author. You're welcome, ma.
Thank you for having me.
We're so happy to have you here.
Yeah,
I can see the knowledge radiating off you. Okay, so what's your job description like? What does it do basically?
Okay, I'm a public health physician. It means a specialist, a doctor that specializes in preventive health and primary care. So yes, I'm a doctor, so I take care of common health
related issues
affecting people. But our core specialty is epidemiology, which is the description, determinants of disease. For example, coronavirus, the cause, the factors that are propagating the spread, and how it can be controlled.
So you have been really busy this period, I can see.
Yes.
Okay, so what is malaria? What would you say malaria is to you?
Okay, malaria is a very severe disease caused by a parasite called Plasmodium falciparum. So they are of different species, but Plasmodium falciparum is the one that causes the most severe manifestation of the disease.
Okay.
It's a very common condition here in our environment because of certain factors, which I'll discuss later. And it's something that kills a lot of people, especially children under 5 years old. So it's worth discussing.
It definitely is.
Yes.
Okay, so how is this malaria transmitted? You know, when we're small, they just told us it's mosquito, mosquito, mosquito. So give us an in-depth explanation, please.
Okay, it's actually transmitted by the bites of the female Anopheles mosquito, basically. So that's the transmission.
Okay.
So it transmits the Plasmodium that I talked about earlier. From person to person.
It's alarming that a lot of people keep dying from it, and it's everywhere. I really don't understand it. So how is it actually treated? Is there a specific way it's supposed to be treated?
Well, actually, yes, people die from it, but it's not really as bad as it used to be.
Okay.
There has been a lot of improvement over the years between 2011 to 2013. Malaria was a very important disease that was targeted during the Millennium Development Goals to be eradicated, and there has been a lot of progress. So it's not as bad as it used to be. We know drugs that treat it, we have drugs that treat it, and these drugs are effective. And yes, more and more people are getting more aware, so it's not as bad as it used to be 10 years ago. However, we can still do more, we can still do better. Children are still dying. There are vulnerable people that are dying. People like, it affects certain classes of people more, like children, like I said, pregnant women.
Okay.
So it's a disease that reflects social inequality in the sense
in what way?
Okay. In the sense that it's people that, it doesn't affect everybody equally. It affects people that do not have, it affects everybody, but the people it most likely will kill are people that do not have access to healthcare, good healthcare services, that do not have access to some of the preventive steps you need to take. People that stay in slums, they've never heard of what they call insecticide-treated nets, they don't know what they call chemoprophylaxis. So it's still, and it's more in Africa, which reflects a lot of the issues I'm talking about, social inequality.
Why is it that it is prevalent in Africa? Because we're the ones suffering this the most, definitely.
Okay, actually malaria is almost worldwide. A lot of countries suffer from malaria. However, here in Africa, About three things contribute to its spread here.
Okay.
Number one, the environment. The environmental conditions in Africa kind of contributes, it's good for its growth. So the parasites tend to survive in tropical regions, hot, humid environments.
And we have a lot of
and we
that.
have that, you know. So that's another one of the reasons. Then, in terms of control, some countries have been successful in eradicating malaria, but here we still have a lot of problems like health system problems, problems relating to health financing that would address the issues that lead to malaria.
Would you say self-medication is one of the issues, or one of the reasons why a lot of people actually don't?
So that's what I was talking about, inequalities. So people that will tend to do self-medication will not know that they will use the wrong drugs, you know. They might not know that, yes, it's so common now that almost everybody thinks I can treat malaria.
You just say, I have headache, I have this, I have this.
Yes,
It's
any
definitely
febrile
malaria.
illness is tagged malaria. And they now try to start taking concussions, especially people in rural areas.
That drink all the local mixtures.
Yes, agbo. Agbo is a very popular one. So they tend to take things they feel, and by the time they come, because malaria is, at first, it's not supposed to be, it can be mild, it can be moderate, it can be severe, and it can lead to complications. So at the time where you have it and you're supposed to take something that will treat it quickly, you don't, and then it progresses and becomes severe, and then complications start setting in.
What kind of complications?
Okay, so malaria is actually a condition that can affect every organ in the body. So it's not, yes.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah, it can affect every organ in the body. It can affect the brain, leading to what they call cerebral malaria. This is very common in children, although adults also have it, where you see children start having convulsions or seizures, and it can affect their cognitive functions mentally. It can lead to something called a metabolic acidosis that will cause a respiratory distress, so you cannot breathe. Malaria leads to severe anemia. Anemia can kill. It can affect the kidneys, leading to some form of acute kidney failure. It can cause hypoglycemia, reduction of glucose. So it can affect every part of the body.
That's a lot.
Yes, it can. So it's people undermine its severity. So if especially in a vulnerable person like children, it can really be very deadly. So it used to be one of the top 5 causes of deaths among African children.
Okay.
Yeah, because of how severe it can be. So it's really something we shouldn't play with.
Definitely.
Yes.
So are there different types of malaria, or can you consider all malaria to be the same?
Okay. So that's why I said when it's now severe, we now have the one we call cerebral malaria. So that's why. But generally, malaria is malaria. You can tag it whether it's mild, it's moderate, or severe, and then if it's simple, uncomplicated malaria, or normal complicated. So when it becomes complicated, when all those things I talked about start coming into play, so you call it, it's no more uncomplicated malaria, it becomes complicated malaria. Yeah.
Okay, so what are some of the symptoms to look out for?
Okay. Generally, it's a febrile condition, so usually associated with fever, chills, and rigors. So fever, your body is hot and
you're
cold,
shivering.
and then it has a very classic presentation of fever. So the fever comes and goes. So you have a fever now, and after a while you break into a sweat and you're fine, think you're okay, and then maybe 4, 5, 6 hours later the fever comes again. So that kind of fever, headaches, body pain, generalized body pain, what else, bitter tongue. But fever is one of the presenting features. Yes.
Okay, so you mentioned it earlier, many foreign countries no longer have malaria as a major problem anymore. What are some of the things they did to actually get to that stage? Okay,
so there's a lot of preventive measures we need to take, and control measures. And it comes with understanding the parasites and the vector. The vectors, like the mosquito, how they breed. What are the things that facilitate their breeding? You know, things like stagnant water, although they've shown some research shows that in free-flowing water too,
They survive.
It can breed, and just conditions generally like use of insecticide-treated nets, access to drugs. But the major factor is environment. You hardly find it in places that are cold, because the parasite cannot survive in very low environments.
So I can just put on my AC 24 hours of the day and then...
Well, they don't like, when you put on your AC, it helps to reduce the humidity. So generally, the mosquito does not really like a very humid, so it can help, but it doesn't prevent it.
Okay.
Correct.
So, you know, people always joke that Noah would have just clapped his hand twice and killed the 2 mosquitoes that were getting into the ark, instead of us having to face all these problems. So what do you think, is it possible to completely eradicate malaria?
It is possible. It is a dream that the world is working at, is a target. However, right now, it's still very far. It's still very far. So, and for that to be possible, there needs to be a lot of political will. There needs to be money. It's possible. It's on the agenda. We're actually working towards it, but it's not presently. Research shows that even if we put in all the efforts we can, by 2050 we'll still have about 11 million cases.
Oh my God.
You know, and that's being modest. So it's possible, but it requires a lot. Political, which right now there's no political will for that. They don't really think, our present government does not see health as a priority. Funding for health is very low. It's not even up to 6% of our total national budget or expenditure for health. You know, and health is plenty things.
Yes.
Then how much will now be set aside for malaria?
When you have so many things
and health is not even a priority. The other things. So it can be done, but it needs a lot of work, commitment,
so for now it's still very far-fetched.
So yeah, it's still far.
But one day we'll
But
hopefully
it's better. It's
there.
actually better than how it used to be. You hardly hear of, especially in the city, you hardly hear of malaria deaths. And if you do hear, like I said, it will be among a very poor person that didn't go to the clinic on time, didn't take the
right
correct
medication,
drugs, didn't use insecticide-treated nets and all that. So
why is it that most times when a person starts having fever and all this, and then they go to all these maybe clinics and the rest, the next thing they'll say is that you have malaria?
Okay, because
without even carrying out any proper tests.
No, that's wrong practice.
It is. So why does that happen most of the time?
No, it doesn't happen. Does it still happen?
It happens.
No, it's wrong practice, because another problem we are having with combating malaria is the presence of drug resistance, in which some of the drugs that used to work are becoming resistant to the parasite, and that's because of indiscriminate treatments.
Okay.
Doctors or people just treating and not treating properly. So the practice and the teaching and the recommendation right now is you don't just treat malaria for anybody that comes with a fever. You must carry out a test that shows that
the person actually has malaria.
It's positive, either a microscopy or a rapid diagnostic test that shows that the person has malaria before you treat. And of course, there are recommended regimens to use, which you have to, because some people can, because of the emergence of resistance, you have to use 2 drugs, at least 2 combinations, which we know, but they're already put in one formulation anyway. Okay. So proper treatment and everything will be fine. Hopefully.
Okay, so is there a vaccine to prevent malaria? Okay,
so they've been working on a vaccine. Right now, I think they did a pilot in some African countries. Ghana was one of the countries they did a pilot in.
Did it work?
Well, I think so. I think so, but it has not reached Nigeria for now. There's a vaccine in the works that has been developed.
Hopefully sometime
soon.
So
they're still studying it before they make it general or widespread. Okay. But there is a vaccine.
So there's hope that one day all our children could just be vaccinated. Hopefully. And then there'll be no problems. And
hopefully.
That would be nice.
Going on, yeah.
Okay. So what are some of these preventive measures that everybody should take?
Okay. You've all heard, number one, in your house there should be nets. Let your house be, because of our environment, it's conducive for the parasite to grow and the female Anopheles mosquito. So put nets in your home. Then everybody should sleep with an insecticide treated net. Very, very important, especially when you have children and pregnant women, because they are most susceptible to malaria. The thing is, since we are in an endemic means that malaria is part of, is highly, a lot of people have it. So because of it, a lot of people have grown some form of immunity to malaria. So that's why it doesn't really affect adults as much. So there's some endemicity to it. However, for those that are susceptible, like I said, children, pregnant women, you should always sleep with an insecticide treated net. Then there's something called residual spraying of your home with an insecticide that the malaria parasite is sensitive to. Because another thing is, it's like the parasite is becoming, even the mosquitoes, they are becoming resistant even to insecticide.
Normal insecticide, yes.
So there are some insecticides that still work for them. So you want to spray the walls of your home in the evenings, keep your doors locked.
Wait, you mentioned a spray for the malaria that prevents malaria.
No, that's what I'm saying. Spraying your home with insecticide treated with an insecticide.
Okay, a regular
functioning
insecticide.
Walls regularly, yes,
okay,
to kill the mosquitoes that will transmit.
Okay, the walls, not just the entire space.
Okay, why I said no, walls particularly, because that's where the mosquitoes perch on. So not just the air. It might not. So you want to target the walls, because that's where they'll perch most times.
Okay.
Yeah, not just spraying anyhow. No, the walls of your home. Then using an insecticide treated net. Then you might want to give what they call chemoprophylaxis. So if you know there's a high amount of malaria in this environment, you are not immune, especially maybe people that stay abroad where there's no malaria, they're coming back home. There's some drugs they can take to prevent malaria. So you want to take that. Even for pregnant women, we routinely give them preventive therapy for malaria at least twice. And you can also do that for children too.
Okay, so what advice will you have for Nigerians who are fond of self-medicating and just, you know...
No, don't do that. It's very wrong, because you are fighting the world's efforts to fight malaria when you self-medicate. So yes, a lot of people know the drugs we use, and it might not even be malaria, because there are also other conditions that present with fever and all that. So a lot of people die like that because they're actually taking the right drugs, because it's like everybody seems to know, okay, this is what they give, and they're taking it, but they're not getting better, and they die. And when you check, they didn't have malaria. They had something else that looked like it was malaria. So don't do that. Go to a hospital and let them do a test on you to be sure of what you have. The doctor would ask you questions that will guide the tests he will tell you to do.
Okay, thank you for being on the show with us today. It's been a really exciting time.
Thank you.
Do you have any final parting words or advice to people? If people want to reach out to you for advice on any health-related issues, so...
Okay, you can follow me on Instagram at Dr. Anire. I'll put it on the screen.
Okay.
And I give health advice via that medium.
Free health advice?
Yeah, for my page, yes. But of course, yeah, free health advice.
Okay.
Except you want one-on-one or something.
Okay. Thank you very much for being on. Hope you had a lovely time, because I did.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. So malaria is so common that so many times a lot of people overlook it. But we shouldn't, because it is potentially very, very dangerous, as you've heard. So if you have it, make sure you treat yourself well. And if you don't, please take care. Take all the precautions you need to make sure you don't get it. Okay, right now we're going to cue to Collins for today's episode of Know Your Faith. Stay with us.
Hello and welcome to Know Your Faith series. I'm Collins, and today we'll be talking about the fourth commandment, reflecting on what it entirely says and what it means. And we can see this in Exodus 20:12, which says, "Honor your father and your mother, so that your days may be long." Now, this is the only commandment with a promise attached to it. So, what does honoring one's father and mother actually mean? The commandment is not only repeated by Christ, but also by St. Paul, as we see in his letter to Ephesians, where he encourages us in chapter 6 from verse 1 to 3. He says, "Children, be obedient to your parents, for it is pleasing to him." Also, the Lord has also charged parents to, one, educate their children in the Christian faith and plan of salvation. There's a saying that you bring up a child in the way of the Lord and he would never depart from it. Two, help to share the appropriate behaviors and build self-esteem. It's very important that I think a lot of parents overlook this. Shaping your child's general behavior and self-esteem is actually very important. And three, develop the right attitudes towards people, states, and society. Generally, obedience to your parents brings a sort of attitude of respect towards God and authorities in generally. The family is a unit of society, so once there's obedience within that unit, then we can now start talking about respect to authorities. Also, this commandment places the responsibility for moral upbringing, instruction to righteous living on the parents. Obviously, we have other people who can, on certain occasions, fill this role. Teachers, guardians, sometimes the elder sibling, spiritual directors, and even mentors. There's a common African saying that it takes an entire village to raise a child. Now, about the promise, like I said earlier, the promise would actually only hold if you obey the commandment. Yeah, it talks about, it's fun because commandment talks about obeying your parents. So the promise would only come through if you actually obey that commandment. Now, a couple of people may ask, should we actually always obey our parents? Now, it's important to know that, yes, not all fathers are God-fearing, and not all mothers actually care for their children the way they should. However, this does not in any way negate the commandment, okay? But what it basically means is that even if we have such parents, once they tell us to do something, if it is something that is right and something that is good, of course you should do it. However, if it is something that goes against your general moral upbringing, then you should probably have a conversation about it. It's not about trying to claim that you're right or they are wrong, but just trying to have a general conversation to let them know that this is actually a wrong thing to do. Okay, so here's a question for today. In what epistle did St. Paul admonish us to obey our parents? I already said this earlier, so there's already kind of like an expo, so you can always go back and check the video and let us know in our comment section. Please like, subscribe, and share this content. Until we meet again, be bold and be Catholic.
Welcome back. That was Know Your Faith for today, and that is the end of our show. Thank you so much for being with us. So you are an author, right?
Yes,
so can you tell us a little bit about your books? And
okay, so I'm reading some books for children called Healthy Kids Are Happy Kids, and Nicole Learns to Wash Her Hands, and another book for mothers, Motherhood 101, just teaching mothers and children about health in a fun, easy way they can understand.
Okay, that seems interesting. At least everybody can know. Everybody should know about their health.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Hopefully everybody gets to read your books.
Hopefully, thank you.
Okay, so make sure you follow us on our social media platforms at CFF on TV, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel at Dominican Media Presents. As well, join us on Tuesday at 7 p.m. for our CFF chat room to discuss interesting topics every time. Our topic for this week is going to be what should be done to prevent malaria. Hope I'll see you there. It's going to be a very, very interesting session. So, till next time, keep being saints in jeans and shirts. Peace.
Action.
Yes.
Okay, so how is this malaria transmitted? You know, when we're small, they just told us it's mosquito. So, give us an in-depth explanation, please.
Okay, it's actually transmitted by the bite of the female Anopheles mosquito, basically. So that's the transmission.
Okay.
So it transmits the plasmodium that I'm talking about.